Good morning. Hope everyone is doing well. Uh, and I apologize for a couple of you. It looks like a couple of you showed up last week. I had made the announcement that we weren't going to have fundamentals last week because I was out of the country. But I noticed I got a notification that a couple people logged in. So if that was you, I apologize, but I appreciate the commitment. I'm excited to be back in the saddle this morning and continuing our conversation around the fundamentals. So real quickly to jump into this conversation, let's do a quick review of what we've covered so far through the fundamentals. Number one, in week one, we talked about setting your career growth initiative goals and getting clarity on your 4 conversations. Week 2, we talked about time blocking and how to better time block and better time blocking strategies to give us the best chance of success and making sure that our calendar matches our goals. Week 3, we debunked some fears around lead generation and talked about how to systematically create the opportunity to generate leads and nurture relationships. Week 4, we talked about e-edge and how to systematically set up the follow-ups to keep the value of the conversation high in our client's mind using the 8x8s and the 33 touch, and I showed you how easy those are to set up. Week 5, the week right before I left town, we talked about using and utilizing the pipeline tool to make sure that we're continually focused on the highest priority and highest opportunity for business right now. So that's weeks 1 through 5. Today we're going to jump into another one of the CGI tools. Let me show you real quick here where we're at, and we're going to run through this and jump right into it. So here are the fundamentals that we're going to talk about over the time of this course. We've been focusing on some of the CGI tools. We've covered several of these now, but I want to focus real quickly on the CGI tools. So when we talk about the career growth initiative, these are the tools that help drive this and move it forward. We've already talked about the listing management, which was the week 1, putting our CGI goals together. We've already talked about the pipeline tool and how to use the pipeline tool. Today, we're going to talk about the agent trend report. Now, this one continually surprises me that agents don't know what their multi-year trend report is or where to find it, and that even if they do know what the multi-year trend report is, they're not utilizing it. Now, we have to remember that numbers are the language of business. If we are not tracking numbers and looking at numbers on a regular basis, we are not realistically running a business. We're running a reactionary lifestyle, trying to create some income out of that reaction. Where if we can systematically look at the numbers and the most important numbers, then we can make predictions about where our business is going. And with those predictions, we can change and alter the course of our actions, and we can then predict and influence the end result. If we're not looking at the numbers, if we're not tracking the numbers, if we're not understanding the trend of our own personal business, then in the end, we're just taking whatever shows up, and we're got to be okay with it. And we're in a much better power position if we analyze the numbers, look at what the numbers are telling us should or predicting should happen. And if we're not happy with what that's predicting should happen, we have the opportunity to change the activity. So today we're going to talk about the agent trend report. So first things first, let me show you where to find the agent trend report. So when you log into MyKW, this is the page you come into. If you click on reports right underneath your name on the top left-hand corner, you see where it says reports. You click on reports there. And this always takes a minute to load because it's sifting through. Mine actually takes a little bit longer because it has access to all the agent's information. Yours will just have your information in here. And once these reports get pulled up, you go to Reports, Associate, and click Multi-Year Trend Report. Once you click this multi-year trend report, your personal multi-year trend report will pop up on the screen for you to print. So again, it's under MyKW, under your name, click Reports, go to Associate, a multi-year trend report, and it will pull up your multi-year trend report. So let me now show you the power of the multi-year trend report. I've actually got one here ready for us to analyze together and the key things that we're looking for. Now, anytime we're looking at any of these reports, we want to make sure that we're not getting intimidated by the amount of information, but we want to stay focused on what is the most critical information for us. So you can see here, this is a multi-year trend report of one of our agents. And I want to walk you through it a little bit. You can see that I've already made some notes on here in preparation of this conversation. All the black lines, obviously hand drawn on there, are not going to be on yours when you first pull it up. Let me see here. I've got a quick question from Quinny. Does that count years we weren't here? Great question. So this tracks for the past 5 years, and it does not have the information. It does not have the information for you when you were not with KW. So one of the things that if you're newer to KW, or if you've only been here for a year, what I would encourage you to do is actually go back the first time that you print this out and fill in as much of the information as you can over the last couple of years so that you can still make predictions off your business. And we can use broker metrics report in our office to help track down that information for you. If you don't have it. So if you're newer to KW and you want to go back and say, okay, I want to get a better idea of what I did in 2015 and 2016, particularly, we might not be able to pull it for all of these categories, but we for sure can for the 4 conversations, or at least 3 of the 4 conversations. So connect with either me or your MCA to pull a broker metrics report for that time frame to fill this in. Now, this has much more than just the 4 conversations, and you can spend a lot of time digging into these numbers, but particularly I want to focus on the 4 conversations. Now you can see these vertical lines that I've drawn in black, like this one here. I like to section this off in quarters because I like to play in quarters. I don't like to play in years. So if I can look at what's happening specific in a quarter, I want to make sure that I utilize that quarter or that 3 months of time to make sure that I can make the biggest impact on getting me back on track of my goals, and not saying, like, for instance, right now we just finished the first quarter of the year. If I'm behind on my goals, I'm going to do everything I can to get back on track in the second quarter and not spread out me getting back on track over the next 3 quarters. Because of the truth of the matter is if I'm behind in quarter 1 and I continue the same activities or just barely increase my activities, I'm still going to be behind at the end of quarter 2. So if I'm behind in quarter 1, I'm now playing a quarter 2 game, and I'm going to try to get my goals back on track in that second quarter, so that as I'm coming into third quarter, I'm coming into that third quarter with confidence. So let's look at this agent. So this is a single agent out of one of our offices. And you can see here that in the past on these closed units, we're going to focus on closed units here for a minute. We can see that over the past several years, she's continually increased her business. In 2014, she did 22.5, 21, 33.5, 36, and her goal for 2018 is 40 transactions. So a little bit increase in her goal. She's leveraging a little bit this year. She knows she's bringing on some new skills on the leadership side. So that's a good goal for her to set for a 40 closed transactions. Now let's break that down for the first quarter. For her to be on track for the year, we would take that 40 and divide it by 4. She should be currently at 10 closed units. And we can see based off this report that she's currently at 5 closed units. So she's at 50% of her goal. She's a little bit behind. Now this is where the trending becomes really critical, because now we could look at 2017 and say, hey, what quarters were the strongest for her? Where does she have a trend of showing up in a different quarter in a bigger way? So we can see in 2017, at the end of April, she had closed 7 units. So she was a little bit ahead last year where she is now. Second quarter, she came in a little bit stronger with 9. Third quarter, she slowed down a little bit, and you can see that she came in at 7 for third quarter, and then she came in with a really strong December at 13 closed units. So there was a lot of conversations in the third quarter of last year of how are we going to get back on track and close out fourth quarter strong. And you can see that she really showed up in the fourth quarter. So we're not going to look at this in desperation to say, hey, there's no way to get back on track. We can say, hey, okay, we can see that historically we've really ramped up quarter 2, and Q4. Now, the idea behind this is to say, why is that? Why is my first quarter generally softer than the rest? So the whole idea behind the multi-year trend report is the trending and the story that it tells. And when it tells a story, for us to ask the question, why? Why is that a trend for me? So this is something we clearly can work on in this agent's business, to say, how do we protect our first quarter better in 2019? Because we can see in 2016, 2017, 2018, it's been her lightest quarter. So that can be a conversation. So again, it's about the story we tell. We can go down a little bit here. Let's take a look at listings taken. You can see we're going to be focusing on this category here, listings taken for a minute. So historically, she's done a lot more buyers than listings. Now she's getting to a point when she's doing 50 or 40 transactions a year with more buyers than sellers. That's a lot of energy and a lot of work, particularly where she's doing it all on her own. So this year she had a goal of evening that out of 50% listings and 50% buyers, where historically she's been closer to 40% listings and 60% buyers. So she had a goal of 20 listings. Now again, we can see if we look at this, she's at 1 out of 5. She's got 1. Her goal was 5 listings for the first quarter, but she's only got 1. So we know something's got to change for her to get back on track with her listing goals. And again, this is the power of looking at this this multi-year trend report. Now, one of the things that we always look at is, if you can see all the way to the right category, the quick rule of thumb here is under the month-over-month change. You can see here where I'm highlighting in green, and the year-over-year change. My general rule of thumb is I want to see my business increasing by at least 10% in every category every year. So a quick way for me to gauge how we're doing on our business is if this number right here where it says 100% is in excess of 10%, it goes green. And if the number's less than 10%, it goes pink. So you can see month over month. So last March compared to this March, you can see she had an impact on closed units, because last March she only closed 1. This March she closed 2, so she increased her March over March by 100%. But you can see year over year, saying by this time, by the end of the first quarter in 2017 compared to 2018, she's off pace by 29%. So it's easy for us to just look at the good numbers. Like, it would have been easy for this agent to look at March over March and say, hey, I'm crushing it. I increased my business by 100%. No need to make any changes. But if you look at the number for the quarter, she's behind pace by 28%. So we know there needs to be some action there, but we can see something occurred and went well in March of 2018. Same thing with listings taken. If you look at the year over year, we're 75% off pace for listings taken, because we had taken 4 listings last year by this time, and this year we've only taken 1. In March, we didn't take any, so we're behind by 100%. So this is one of the first activities I do when I get my multi-year trend report. Number 1 is I quarter them off. Number 2 is I come over and highlight red and green for every category. And so I'm going to come through here, and we won't spend the time in every one of these categories, but you can see that the story, the deeper and deeper you get into this, the story becomes more and more clear. For example, look at listings sold here. Listings sold, one of the things that's really interesting is so many of our agents right now, if I ask them the question, what percentage of your listings are selling? Everyone's like, oh, 100%, they all sell. But that's not the truth for most of us. We tend to ignore the ones that we lost, or the ones that sat on the market, or whatever it was. And we can see with this agent, listings sold, if we look at in 2017, she sold 12 of her listings, but she took 14 listings. That means she sold 85% of her listings that she took actually sold. Now that's still pretty good. That's a good number, because right now in the industry standards closer to 75, she's still outperforming that. But if you look at 2016, she sold 14.5 and took 15.5 listings. So in 2016, her number was 93%. So she went from 93% to 85% of her listings sold. Now, that could be market. That could be she happened to take 2 listings that were overpriced. But again, the question here becomes, hey, when I'm predicting my business, I now need to run off 85% instead of 93%, and then ask the question why. That's one of the biggest things I want you to take away from this conversation is, what does the story say? And then always ask the question why. Okay, it does you no good to say, oh, that's the story, without understanding the why behind it, because asking the question why is where we get to alter our game plan and change our future. So let's scroll down here. A lot of these things are things you'll dig into on a deeper level: listing sold volume, buyer sales closed, contracts written is another one, important one, particularly for an agent like this that's really strong working with buyers. You can see, again, highlighting here, she's 40% behind on contracts written from where she was a year ago. She had written 10 contracts by the end of the first quarter of 2017, and she's only written 6 so far. Month over month, from March 2017 to 2017, she's behind 50%. So we can start predicting to say, hey, it takes more contracts to get a closed unit in this market, and we've written less contracts. And that we could say, why? Is that because there's less inventory and it's harder to find? Is it because I've got less aggressive buyers, or my buyers aren't really qualified, or they're more hesitant than they were a year ago? Again, it's the question why. Come down here and look at GCI. We're focusing mainly on the 4 conversations here, but you can see each one of these categories has a lot of credence. Like even the average sales price, you can see that she's year over year, she's ahead by 565% in her average sales price. But in March, she had a really strong March last year, and you can see that she's behind by 23% in her average sales price, meaning that her sales price fluctuates quite a bit. Okay, GCI, let's look at this real quick. So we can see that there's a couple good things here. Year over year, she's ahead 14.4% of her GCI. Month over month, from March to March, she's ahead by 75% of her GCI. So she's ahead, even though she's closed less units so far this year than she did last year. Her GCI is ahead of where it was last year. Now, again, this is where it becomes really important, because in the end, the money that goes into your account, that's like the end game. That's the end result. It'd be really easy for this agent to say, yeah, there's a couple things struggling in my business, or I haven't closed as many units, but I've made more money in the first quarter than I did last year, so I must be doing much better, right? It's easy for us to start making justifications in our mind. And again, looking at this, $55,000 in the first quarter, that's great money. It could be really easy for this agent to say, hey, $50,000 a quarter is pretty dang good. I guess maybe my goals aren't as important to me as I thought they were, because $50,000 is good. But when she made the goal of $306,000 for her annual income, it was important to her at that time, and she was ready to take the activity. Now that she's behind, that's where the drunk monkeys start showing up, and you start creating the justification. So let's look at this. So she should be, if she was on track to hit her goal, she should be at 76,500. She's currently at 54,960. She's at 72% of her goal. Now that's a C. That's still pretty good, right? That doesn't get you grounded when you take home a grade C on your report card in high school. Maybe for some of you, but not for me. And so we look at this and we say, hey, okay, there's some wins there. That's awesome. We got some greens. However, the other pinks tell me that if something doesn't change with my activities, chances are I'm not going to continue on that pace. Okay. So down the rest of these, you can see this whole section here, starting with the ones that say My Tracker. You can see that there's no recording of numbers here. So all the numbers you see on this multi-year trend report, these numbers are things that we track for you. So when you fill out green sheets and you submit into the process and you're using .loop, we track all these numbers for you. The things that we cannot track for you are how many appointments you're going on, how many calls you made, how many notes you wrote, how many homes you previewed, how many signed agreements you took. So this is all tracked at daily104.com. So if you go to daily104.com, and those of you that have been through Ignite know that this is part of the process, and one of the things that we're trying to train agents on right out the gate is track your numbers. So if you go to, and I'll flip over and show you this real quick. If you go to daily104.com, it pulls you into this sheet here. And on this, it helps you track, did I add people to my database? Did I make 10 connections or have 10 conversations? Did I write 10 notes? And did I preview 10 homes a week? This is the daily 10-4, 10 items, there's 4 of them that we love to train agents on. We believe that if agents are doing these 4 things, they will fill their pipeline, they will produce business. So it's really easy for you to come in here and say, great, today on April 23rd, I added 5 people to my database, or whatever the number is, okay? And you can see it gets better and stronger. If you track your numbers in here, they will show up on your multi-year trend report. And imagine the power of looking at your multi-year trend report and saying, oh, look, last year, I only added 4 people on average to my database per day. And this year, I've added 7 people to my database per day. And through our conversations so far, through the fundamentals, we've learned, and this number is going to vary a little bit for everyone depending on your price point, but we know with my team, every single person we add to our database, meaning they've given us permission to follow up with them in our database, is worth $1,287 future dollars. So we can look at that and say, oh, great, we've added people to our database. How many conversations did I have? And this may be us using the quarterly phone calls in the system that we've talked about already. Great, today I've made 7 connections. How many thank you notes did I write? I wrote 7 notes today, okay, or 8. Preview, how many homes did I preview this week? And this is, we're gonna talk a little bit more about this next week of being the expert in your market, is knowing what's going on in the market. Particularly if you're either tackling a new neighborhood or you're newer to the business, you should be out previewing properties on a regular basis and almost mock playing showing the property. And I always recommend to agents that are newer to the business is to grab somebody else that's a new agent. Both of you go to the house and take turns being the agent and the buyer. Show someone the house, walk them through it, and then critique each other, swap roles. You become the buyer, let the other person be the agent in practice. Now, a couple things that I will say with this, because I'm very, very much a proponent of leveraging. So if you happen to have an assistant in your business, the things that I would recommend is set up a standard for your assistant to number one, that by the 6th or 7th of the month, because KW, we post your multi-year trend report by about the 6th of the month, is I would make it a task of your assistant to go download your multi-year trend report, to fill in your 4 conversations, and to put that on your desk by the 7th of every month, ready for you to analyze. The other thing that I would highly recommend is that you have your assistant come in here and update your numbers if you don't want to do it yourself. And maybe that's you're keeping a tally. I know that a lot of us have the 4 conversations posted up on our door, and it may be just at the end of the month you hand that to them and they come in here and say, okay, on the last day of the month, I'm just going to go in here and add them all in. So I'm going to say on 4/30, I'm going to come in and just put all of them in for the month. Okay, so utilize your assistant, utilize leverage if you're not going to do it yourself to do this. Now let me show you one last piece of this, which becomes the final piece of analyzing your multi-year trend report. So once I've pulled up my multi-year trend report, I also have this sheet pulled up. And what I do with this sheet is this is going to show me and really break it down to the most simplistic form of where I'm at with my 4 conversations. So I pull this sheet out, I have it right next to my multi-year trend report, and I write in the 4 conversations, which are, whoops, let's go here, appointments, listings taken, closed units, and GCI. Those are our 4 conversations. Those are the things we're tracking. Everything else is a story around these 4 conversations. Now, what I want to do is say, okay, for March of 2018, I'm going to look at how I'm doing in relation to my goal. So we know for this agent, her goal was 5 appointments, 1 listing taken, 3 closed units, and 22,500 in GCI. Those were the goals that she set for March before March started. Now, this is where she ended up at the end of March. She got her 5 appointments. She did not take any listings. She did close 2, and she had a gross commission income of $20,255. So now I can come and say, hey, look, for my gross commission income, I'm currently for the month, for March, I'm at 90% of my goal. Okay, that's great. I'd look at 90% and say that's pretty dang good. Then I look at it in this bottom part here where you can see I've written quarter one. I'm going to say, where am I year to date? So my goal, I should currently be at 76,500. I'm currently at 54,960. I'm 72% of, well, these aren't my numbers. This is one of our agents' numbers. She's at 72% of her goal. So we'd say, hey, this is awesome at 90% of my goal here. Then we'd say, hey, wait a sec, but I'm at 72%. I went from an A to a C for the year. March, I'm gaining momentum. That's great, but I'm still a little bit behind for the year to date. Let's do the same thing for closed units. So for March, we're at 67% of our goal, okay? My goal for the year, I should be at 10 so far. I'm currently at 5. I'm at 50%. So again, same story here. As March, I'm gaining momentum. That's great news. I'm doing some new activities that are gaining momentum. Listings taken, I'm at for the month, I was 0% of my goal. My goal where I should be for the year, I should be at 5. I'm at 1. I'm only at 20% of my goal for listings taken. So you can see that buyers are still driving my time. Appointments, 5 to 5, that's 100%. So she got serious about her appointments this month to say, hey, I know I need to go on more listing appointments to get back on track with my goal. She set a goal of 5, and she hit the 5. Her goal where she should be for the year is 12, and she's actually at 7, and she's at 58% of her goal for appointments. So just looking at this graph, we can tell a couple really important things of things as we're coming into, now we're getting close to May, which is crazy. We can look at this and say, okay, what needs to happen inside my business? Gross commission income, if I focus on that, nothing's gonna happen. Closed units, I can't just focus on closed units. I need people to talk to that are gonna allow me to close their units. So I wanna focus on these first two conversations here to say, how can I directly impact this? Now, listings taken, this would make me say, why am I not taking the more, if I want 5 appointments, how come I only took 1 listing? Does something need to change with my listing presentation? Why did I not get at least 50% of those, if not 70 or 80% of those? Ask that question. Second question would be, what are my marketing strategies? Are my lead generation sources driving more buyers still to me than listings? I need more listings because buyers take time. And if I'm spending more and more time with buyers, I have less time to spend trying to take listings. And so that becomes a question of, what are my lead sources? How do I leverage? Do I need a showing assistant? So there's some questions to be asking here. And then we can see from our appointments, we set a new goal of 5 to get back on track. We're 100% of that. So something's working with our appointments in March that was not working before, and we're going to continue with that strategy. We're going to recognize what the strategy was, and we're going to keep it rolling. So realistically, we've been talking about this for 20 minutes, and when you have the information in front of you and you know what you're looking for, this is a very quick conversation with yourself, but it casts a really specific light on what are the activities that need to change in your business. Now, one of the things that we have to count on in this business is we have to be comfortable with changing. Now, at the end of the year, really in October, November, we really start hounding and pressing to help you put together your business plan for the following year. So last October, November, we put together a solid game plan for 2018. Well, we didn't know exactly what the market was going to be in 2018. And now it's time for us to say, hey, we put a business plan in concrete format, knew the activities that had to happen, and now we get the opportunity to say, is our business plan working? And if our business plan is working, we celebrate and we keep running the game plan. If our business plan is not working, then we alter it based off the numbers. What I don't want to see people doing is just making changes to their business because some random person showed up in their office and said, oh, you should try this. Let's look at the numbers. Let's be strategic and purposeful in how we're making the changes to our business, and do not climb outside of the 4 conversations goal. This is the playbook. This is the same playbook that the best agents in the country are running. It's just now a matter of modifying the effort and activity within that model. It's not breaking the model, it's running the model better. So this is the conversation from today. Utilize your multi-year trend report Look at it for the story it's telling in relation to the business plan you put together. Ask the question, why? Why is this working? Why is this not working? What would I need to change within the model to get back on track? We just ended Q1. If you have not already done this with your numbers for first quarter of 2018, I'd encourage you to download your multi-year trend report today. And then run this activity to say, where am I at the end of Q1? And then let's commit to utilize Q2 to get back on track. Don't spread the getting back on track game plan over the next 3 quarters. Let's do it in Q2. Okay, let's open this up. Any questions for me before we wrap it up and go tackle our week? Okay, can I get a commitment from everyone? Give me a thumbs up in the comments if you're going to commit to go download your multi-year trend report today. I'm looking for a thumbs up from everybody. Commitment there. I got a video one of Quinny here. The rest of you can pop it into the chat section that aren't on video, but go look at your multi-year trend report and tell me the story it's telling to you. Thank you guys for being on here. Appreciate your commitment to your business. And then one last thing I'll make a comment on is quarterly market update is happening in all of your offices over the next 2 weeks. I'm doing it in Layton tomorrow for the team meeting. I'm doing it in South Ogden a week from tomorrow. And then I'm going to be doing the Salt Lake quarterly market update in 2 weeks from tomorrow in Midvale. So make sure to have those on your calendar.
Hey, Marcus?
Yeah.
We had a team meeting last week, so it's not tomorrow.
The one in Layton is tomorrow. South Ogden is in 2 weeks. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.